What's up, Digital Business Evolution? Welcome back to the show. I have one of my dear friends here today. I'm so excited for this guy to pour into you. He's not your average mindset coach. So I will give our formal intro and then I'll give you a little bit of a personal intro. So today we've got Brad Bizjack on. He is a personal development expert, mindset strategist and coach, international inspirational speaker, and podcast host. Brad is a personal development expert, podcast host, and multiple seven-figure CEO with 9 years of experience in coaching. His mission is to help entrepreneurs come alive to their limitless possibilities while arriving at their own unique vision of success. Brad's happily married to his beautiful wife and, of course, has the cutest little girl, Lillian, and their dog, Oliver, and they live in Western Illinois. So Brad and I actually met in our high-level mastermind this year, and it was like an instant connection of just, yeah, I get it. We get it. We do the same thing. We speak the same speak. And I had a really cool experience with Brad recently where we actually were at a basketball game. That was part of our mastermind because that's what you do at masterminds. We were at a basketball game and we sat next to one another, and he kind of took me through, it wasn't unsolicited. You definitely asked permission, but he took me through some mindset work that it was one of those times where like I knew I needed it, but I didn't want to do it. And I had been feeling a little bit stuck in my life and in my mind for a long time around this one particular thing. And so it sort of just organically unfolded. And since that day, I've definitely been on the other side of the thing that I was feeling so stuck on. It ultimately came down to a decision that I had to make, that I got to make. And that decision happened at the game with you. And so when I looked at the calendar and saw that we had a podcast episode dropping or recording, I was so extra excited because I got to witness it, not from an outside perspective, but I actually got to witness it from almost being like one of your clients and working through something together. So I'm so freaking grateful for you. I'm so excited that you're here, Brad. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm beyond pumped to serve the audience listening, and this is just going to be great. I'm excited to add some value and help people rewire their mind for success. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So something that I love about you is the way that you approach mindset from this strategic lens. So it's not just fluff. It's not just woo. It's not just NLP, Tony Robbins, fill in the blank, right? You really come in as like a mindset architect. That's how I see you. And you're sort of like moving walls around and like ripping up flooring. And you don't just lay down new floors on top of like old moldy floors. You go in and you're like, let's remove the moldy floor and then put the new flooring down. So I'm a visual person and that's how I see you. Can you just talk to us for a second about how you got to where you are? How did you become this mindset architect?
That is, by the way, the most amazing description of, I've never heard that before.
Oh,
And I'm
yeah.
totally stealing that, by the way. That is amazing. So, so yes, absolutely. It didn't start this way. I remember, like, I'll give you a little bit of a backstory. I started out my, we call it personal development journey, $92,000 in debt. I grew up with a lot of limiting beliefs of, there's too much month at the end of the money. Money doesn't grow on trees. I had a lot of scarcity mindsets and a lot of fear that I wasn't enough, fear that I'd never measure up. And my entire life, I thought finance would change that, right? I thought changing my financial circumstances would actually make me feel happy. And so when I got out of college, I was $92,000 in debt. And I got a job trying to make it work, and it just, nothing ever happened, right? I never really broke free. It was like every time I got a pay raise, the debt would still be there. Money would still be scarce. And I remember thinking, like, why is this? And I'm like, I need to do something to change this. And I wanted something in my life where I was sprinting towards something instead of running away from something. I wanted something for me. And so I started an online business. And I thought that was the ticket, man. I saw all these images of success and all this, and I thought that would change my life. And deep down, what I was really after was breaking the chains of mediocrity in my family history. That's what I really wanted. But everything I tried didn't work. It felt like I was swimming upstream. It felt like I was going against the grain of everything in my nervous system. And it didn't matter how many podcasts I listened to, how many books I read. It didn't matter. It just didn't work for me, but it seemed to be working for everybody else. And I started to get in my head.
Yeah.
Started thinking, like, is this not meant for me? Am I really just destined for mediocrity? Is success really possible for me? And my mentor told me, like, dude, you need a mindset coach because what you're doing is not going to work. And I was 92 grand in debt. But I remember thinking, okay, if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Right.
And so I maxed out one of my credit cards and I got a coach. And I'm not suggesting do that.
Yeah.
That's what I did. And I got a coach. And on our very first call, she said something that changed my life forever. I was telling her how I wanted this to work so bad. I'm doing all this stuff. I'm reading the books. I want to get out of debt. I'm trying so hard. Why isn't it happening for me, but it's working for everyone else? And she goes, Brad, you're so attached to success that you're missing the whole point.
Mm.
You're under the impression you shouldn't be where you are right now. She goes, Brad, business success and money isn't going to magically make you happy. It's happiness and appreciation for your life that will lead you to success. If you want to succeed, you have to rewire that thinking. And so I went on this journey of figuring that out. And I remember being tested so many times, like literally, like, you know how life is always testing you to see if you're for real?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I remember buying a ticket to a mindset conference. And in the months leading up to that, I got fired from my job. Now I'm $92,000 in debt. No income, no savings. But luckily, I already had the tickets. And I fly to that conference. This is like 6 months later. My life hadn't changed, but I had been reading the books. And I get to that conference. And I remember walking in the door, tail between my legs. And the topic that day was literally the exact same thing that my coach told me. And
Mm.
I went through this huge transformative experience of rewiring my beliefs, like architecting the
Yeah.
way that I live my life. And within 3 years of going to that conference, we not only paid off the debt, retired my wife, generated multiple millions of dollars of sales, but we've changed thousands of lives across the world. And I realized something very, very powerful, that life's always happening for you and not to you. And there's a gift in every single painful thing that you experience. And I realized that, wow, I have this amazing gift to offer people. I'm going to go all in on that because I've lived through it. And I know that anyone trying to change their life in the business space, they're just one slight little shift away from a radically different life. And here we are years later, and that's kind of the backstory.
It's just incredible. What you're saying, I know resonates with so many people. Also, I just have to acknowledge you. If you're not watching the YouTube channel right now, you're only listening, you wouldn't have seen this. But when I mentioned Brad being a brain, like a mindset architect, he actually wrote that down. So proof again that note takers are money makers. So what you want to do on the show is you want to take notes. So as Brad's dropping these little wisdom nuggets and sound bites, make sure you are taking notes, because I know if you're anything like me, which we all are the same, you struggle with some of this stuff. And I can really, really relate to, I almost equate it to like telling someone who's having a panic attack to calm down. It's like you can keep reading the books, but if you're not open to receiving it, or you haven't gone underneath the flooring that has the mold, it doesn't matter how many books or how many podcasts you listen to. So your coach told you this thing that shifted it right for you. And you go to this event and it comes up again and you're like, okay, how did you go from it's not permeating to it actually then permeated? Like, what was the tangible thing that you had to do? Because I know that's the biggest question. It's like, okay, well, I am listening to the books. I've done this for so long. I'm open to receiving. I just don't get it. What's like the thing if you could pinpoint it?
That's a great question. And it kind of goes back to that metaphor of being the architect. I finally ripped up the moldy floors
Mm.
instead of just trying to put new floors on top of the moldy floors.
Yeah.
What most people do when they're trying to change their life, they'll read a personal development book and they'll study. And they're like, okay, like that's it. And then they don't really change their life. So they think I must be missing something. And so they buy another personal development book. And next thing, and they just don't get the transformation. And then 30 self-help books stacked up in the corner later, they have the exact same life. And there's a reason for that. It's because they're trying to put new floors on top of the moldy ones. One thing that really changed my life was having the courage to look at the beliefs that were causing me to operate this way.
Ooh.
If you think about what a belief is just a feeling of certainty. That's all a belief is. It's a feeling of certainty. It feels like a fact, but it's just your opinion. And so I had to take a look at, okay, well, is that really true? Is it actually true that money is a scarce resource? Is it actually true that my audience isn't listening to me? Is it actually true that I can't launch because I have a small list? Is that actually true? Or are these just limiting beliefs that are holding me back, and they make me feel certain, and they make me feel safe, and they make me stay in my bubble? See, I knew I wanted to expand into something bigger. I had this drive, like I knew I was meant for so much more than what I was getting
Yeah.
out of life, but I just stayed in that little shell. And so I believe it goes back to taking a look at, is that really true that I can't? Like, there's this, I forgot what movie it is, but there's a quote in a movie where someone like is just going bananas and someone says, "Do you hear yourself when you talk?" Right? Like
Yeah.
and I needed to take a look at how I was operating that inner operating system so I could rip up those floors. And once I ripped up those floors, I could put new ones down. And last thing with this, I think a lot of new business owners, they rely on what I call toxic blind positivity.
Let's
And
talk about that.
yeah, this is a big one. Um, they pretend problems don't exist or just think that being positive is going to make them successful. And they're using it as a coping mechanism for insecurity. And that's what I used to do. I used to pretend I was fine, pretend I was good, and I was like this positive light on the outside.
Yeah.
On the inside, I was dying because positivity was my coping mechanism for insecurity. It's how I avoided my problems.
Mm,
But instead of being toxically positive, we want to be optimistic because you can't go to your garden and say, "Hey, there's no weeds here," and expect the weeds to just disappear. You got to do the work.
right.
Most people think that just by reading a personal development book and listening to an audio and meditating, they're going to have a massive business. That's not how it works. You have to do the aligned action to actually create it and work hard on that aligned action to create the life that you want. But most people don't do that. They just pretend that everything's fine and rationalize all these little excuses that keep them in the same place because they're
Yeah.
making negative emotions wrong.
Yeah.
And we're going to go into I can go into that more if you want, but that's a big one.
Yeah, it's interesting too because we culturally, I feel, just have this response that we don't even think, "Hey, how are you? Good. What's going
Yeah.
on?" Like, right? It's just like that's how we answer. It's like, or we say busy, like it's a badge of honor. We're like, "Oh, it's just so busy." Like, "How you doing?" I'm good. I'm fine. Is everything okay?" It's fine. Right? That's the way that we answer because maybe it is the lack of courage to look within or to express how we actually feel. I don't know if that's coming from a place of fear of judgment or not wanting to appear negative, right? Like nobody wants to be the complainer in the room. Nobody wants to be the gossiper in the room. So it's like, how are you? I'm okay, I'm fine. But like, how are you really? And so to me, even telling your truth there is a very small way that you can start to practice having the courage to really express how you are feeling, to really express how you are thinking. Is there something else that you can do to put into practice to start to shift that mindset away from like, I'm good, everything's fine in avoidance to I'm actually going to let this bubble up to the surface because awareness is a huge piece of this. So courage to looking at it is the first thing, right? And to me the second thing is like having the awareness of it. So what's something else that you can do or do you have a practice of like how do you become aware or start to take aligned action?
That's a great question. And self-honesty is freedom,
Woo.
right? Self-honesty is total freedom. If you're willing to be honest with yourself about how you're feeling, like all emotions serve us. All the emotions are a beautiful thing. Positive emotions are a reward for how you've been living, and negative emotions are a call to action for what needs to change to feel positive emotions. And so all emotions are beautiful things. But what most people do is they avoid negative emotions. If you think about what's actually more inspirational, someone saying, "Yeah, I'm good," versus someone saying, "Hey, you know what? I'm facing a challenge right now and my feelings are hurt, but here's how I'm choosing to look at it. Here's what I'm going to do about it. Here's how I'm going to move forward." That's way more inspirational than someone just pretending everything's totally fine.
Yeah.
And so we want to be honest with that. But the reason why people don't, and the reason why people avoid being honest about how they're feeling is because they perceive negative emotions to be wrong. And so if you think about it, like we'll use the example of the panic attack idea, right? Which is basically stacked anxiety. That's all a panic attack is. And anxiety just means you care about the future. That's all it means. It's a beautiful thing. And so what most people do when they feel anxious is they make it wrong to feel anxious. I shouldn't feel anxious. So then what happens? They get anxious that they're anxious. They get
Yeah.
feelings about their feelings, and it stacks and it bubbles up, and they either shut down and get stressed out or burnt out, or they explode from stress. And that's what happens when you don't accept your circumstances and your challenges as real things that you have to face. Our mutual mentor, James Wedmore, says to the degree in which you're willing to accept your circumstances is the degree in which you're willing to change them. But what most people do
He's so
is
smart.
he's so smart. He's so smart.
He's so smart.
That was great. But most people look at these negative emotions and say, I shouldn't feel this way.
Right.
They say, I don't want to feel this way. This is uncomfortable. And so they resist the negative emotion. They make it wrong to feel anxious, which makes it pile on top of itself and get even worse. And it
Mm-hmm.
leads to interrupting that pattern with either TV or binge eating or drinking or whatever it is. But what would happen in an anxious moment if you just paused and said, huh, I'm anxious. Okay. And you just own that you're anxious. You
Right.
own that you're afraid. All of a sudden, the anxiety goes down, because one of the greatest keys to mastering your emotions is to welcome the negative ones.
Mm.
When you welcome the negative ones, they don't have nearly as big of a hold on you. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden you can change. So it's not saying pain won't happen. It will happen. Pain is guaranteed. Suffering is your choice. And so if we stay in pain, meaning I'm not saying that pain won't last a little bit, it will, but how we choose, we just don't stay there. We need to accept and honor, okay, this happened. This is a challenge. This hurt. Here's how I'm choosing to view it now. For some people, that's a week. For some people, that's a day. For some people, that's 2 months. Whatever it is, it's totally up to you.
Yeah.
But the longer we choose to perceive pain as wrong, the longer those negative emotions stack, and that limits the actual actions we take in our business.
Yeah. And we're allowing those negative emotions or that story or that belief to have power over us. And when you can shift that perspective, like you're saying, you suddenly have power over it or them, right? Which is super powerful. So I want to shift gears for a second, because so many of our listeners are business owners, entrepreneurs, solo hustlers, coaches, right? You teach this idea of the strategic mindset work to then building six-figure success.
Mhm.
Can you break that down for us? And is it available to anybody?
So when you say available to anybody, like this ability to create six-figure
Yeah.
success,
Yeah.
yes,
Mhm.
yes, and beyond six-figure
Sure.
success,
Is this what you've done to build your business?
yes. This is, if I
Okay.
take
So you're going to want to listen.
a if I take a look back at my journey on this path to where we are now, it really came down to a few unique things that I did. And I break it down into six steps that every single business owner can take to create massive amount of success in their life. The first piece that we need to do is actually unrealistically dream. And what
Mm,
do I mean by that? I'm not saying don't be realistic about the time you have in the day. I'm not saying don't be realistic about saying I'm going to be a billionaire tomorrow. But if you think about what most entrepreneurs do, they set their goals based on the past. And if you set your dreams and goals based on the past, your focus is on the past, and the past becomes the future when you live there. And so if your focus is consistently on what went wrong, how you failed, you're bound to repeat it. And so we don't want to set our dreams based on the failures of the past. We want to set it based on what we actually want. Most people are focused so much on why they're stuck instead of what they want. And if they just change that one thing, their whole life will change in an instant. So have the courage to say, what do I really want? Do you really just want to get out of debt, or do you want to be able to travel the world with your kids, right? Like whatever, I'm making that up as an example, but most people set a goal that just gets them out of pain.
yeah.
And that's a good first step. But if your goal is just to get out of pain, there's no aspiring future to lead to. And if there's no aspiring future to lead to, then of course you're going to repeat the exact same situation. If you don't have a compelling vision of the future, you are forced to focus on the problems of the present. And if you're forced to focus on the problems of the present, then your state lowers, you feel worse because there's nothing pulling you. And then you rely on push motivation, which is willpower. And willpower is a beautiful thing. It gets you to move, right? It's great having the willpower to take action. But if you rely on only willpower, you get burnt out. You need something more beautiful that pulls you. And so that's one of the first things we do with every entrepreneur we work with is ask ourselves, what do you really want? Not like, don't lie to yourself. Self-honesty is freedom. What do you really want? The next thing we do is we go deep into the limiting beliefs that hold people back. I call this awaken. And
Yeah.
we ask ourselves, we ask like, okay, how would you respond to this? Business is, and most people say hard or challenging, right? And here's the thing. It might be true that business is hard, right? But we need to ask ourselves, does that story serve our action? See, most people live in limiting stories all day long. And they'll say, okay, business is hard. That might be true, but it doesn't matter if it's true. It matters if it serves your action right now. And so what if business became fun? What if business became a spiritual game? What if business became an experiment? What if business became a dance? Like if you think about it from that perspective,
Just the energy those words hold is so different.
It's completely different.
Yeah.
It's completely different. And then when you're looking at taking action, what you speak becomes how you live. The words you use to describe your experience literally become your experience. If I'm saying, I'm so overwhelmed, well, you're going to feel that way. But if I
Yep.
say, I'm a wee bit perturbed right now, like you're
You're going to feel a wee bit perturbed.
going to feel a wee bit perturbed. So it just lightens it. And so we want to take a look at our stories and say, okay, that story might be true, but it doesn't matter if it's true. It matters if it serves us. So we want to go back into the limiting beliefs, rip them out, and then replace them with empowering ones that serve us. The third thing we do is we talk about emotional mastery, right? How do we master our emotions and control how we feel in the moment? I call it an emotional thermostat.
Sure.
Like,
this is like emotional intelligence, right? Because
yes.
we've talked about that a bit on this show. Yeah. Emotional intelligence. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Tell me about your thermostat.
So if you think about like most people are thermometers,
Mhm.
right? They look at their circumstances in their life and they say, because of these things in my life, that's why I feel the way I do. But that's BS. How you feel is the thing that's causing the circumstance in your life, or the thing that will change the circumstances in your life. And so most people are thermometers for their experience instead of a thermostat. And even when they apply that metaphor to their life, let's say that
Hold on, meaning that a thermometer, or we're thermostats, you said.
So
we're thermometers.
A thermometer will take a look at the circumstances and
Sure.
say, this causes me to feel a certain way, which is not true.
So based on the temperature of the room, I am this temperature.
Yes. But
okay,
even when we shift to being a thermostat, meaning we set our emotions.
Right. It's going to be 70 degrees in here, and Mike's going to be mad because it's too hot for him, but it's perfect for me. Got
exactly.
it. 70 degrees.
Well, Mike can just take his shirt off.
So when we're a thermostat, we are setting the temperature.
Yes, we are setting the temperature. But what most people don't realize is when they're setting the temperature, they don't realize they're setting the temperature too low. Ooh. So have you ever noticed that?
I'll go with 75. It's even better.
75.
75 and sunny, baby.
Like most people, like, have you ever noticed excited people tend to find something to get excited about?
Yes.
Pissed off people tend to find something to get pissed off about. Anxious people tend to find something to get anxious about. It's because of their emotional thermostat. Let's say that your emotional thermostat is set at, let's say, 65 degrees. We'll call that frustrated, right? Let's say that life hits the fan, right? And everything, it's just crazy. Well, the temperature is going to drop.
Yep.
But if your thermostat's set to 65, the furnace kicks on and it will elevate you eventually back up to frustrated. This is why overwhelmed people tend to find something to get overwhelmed about. They might find something in their life to depress them, but they don't stay there. They get back to overwhelmed. And so, but then here's what happens. If someone has a thermostat set to 65, when something really amazing happens at like 100 degrees, it can't be that good. It can't be that easy. It can't be that simple. And so the AC kicks on and they drop their temperature back down to overwhelm.
Yep.
And so what we want to do is really say, okay, what emotional state would serve my dreams? What state do I want to be in to serve my dreams? You think about little kids. Little kids are the greatest example of success in the world. Because like a little kid, they come into the kitchen in their Spider-Man underwear and an astronaut helmet and say what they want to do when they grow up. The energy and the creativity is so alive in them.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. And from that energy, they come up with new ideas they didn't have before. Their thermostat's at 110. But most adults, we're conditioned when we're 12 years old and beyond to sit down, shut up, get an A+ or you're a failure.
Yep.
And so we recondition our emotional thermostat to choose our emotions. Not saying we won't experience pain, but how to get to a better place.
I'm loving this analogy and this visual so much. And I know so are the listeners, because it's just, I can feel it. I can see it. How do you raise your thermostat? Is it just a choice that now I'm 85 or I'm just 100? Or are there things that I can do to keep me in check to make sure that like it's always coming back to that, okay, now it's 100, right? How do you actually change your thermostat?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it comes down to little tiny habits. Like most people will do a vision board or set a goal and never relive it. Like Wayne Dyer said, live in the feelings of your wishes. And that's important, because if you think about it, you don't set a goal for the goal. You set the goal for the person you become and the feelings you think you'll experience when you hit that goal. But if you close your eyes and literally live in that vision, you picture this beautiful life, you get the feelings that you think that goal will bring you now. And when you get those feelings now, then all of a sudden action flows from that. It's living in appreciation. It's saying, yes, this hurts, and here's how I'm choosing to look at it. It's taking care of your health. It's all of these little things that raise that thermostat. But at the end of the day, it comes down to your standards. It comes down to, what am I willing to accept in my life? Like, you get what you tolerate. And so if overwhelmed is where you stay, it's time to start asking yourself, what is that costing me? What is that costing you with your kids? What are they witnessing? How are they going to grow up from this? What are the consequences of being where you are right now? And what would happen if you shift? Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
go ahead.
go ahead. No, I was going to recap where we're at right now. So the first thing that we're doing in this 6-figure success model, we're setting these unrealistic dreams, which, to your point, they can go on the vision board all you want, but are you revisiting it? Are you feeling the emotions of it? And also, are you taking action on those things? You can't just stick them up on you can't Pinterest your perfect life. Just doesn't work that way. Number 2 then is we're checking out, we're uncovering, we're picking up the flooring, and we're really looking at those limiting beliefs so that we can then unpack and then rewrite them. The third one is the emotional mastery, which is the thermostat. So setting that bar higher, setting that emotional thermostat a little bit higher than maybe it was. And is this something also that we can, that we can set higher and then higher and then higher? So like, can we master 65 degrees and then, okay, now I want to stretch myself to 75 degrees and then eventually to 85? Or do we just jump from 65 to 100?
Jump from 65 to 100. It's that
Ooh,
simple. It is
okay.
that simple. But most people don't have a limiting belief that I can't do that.
Mm,
Right. But when you go back to pulling up that flooring,
yeah.
your beliefs will literally cause more of whatever you're feeling. And so people will find, if they believe, let's say, that no one listens to me, or like, who am I to serve this audience? Right. Well, think about what emotions flow from that. But if you have a belief of, this is so amazing, I can't help but serve other people with this. If you think about that stuff, the emotions that come from that new empowering belief are way higher.
Yeah.
So the work that we do back in step 2 directly impacts step 3.
Mm. Okay. So then what's step 4? We're building a house here. I can see where this is going.
We're building a house. Yes.
I
So
love it.
all 3 of these are, oops, excuse me, I just nudged the desk. Sorry about the feedback noise. But these first 3 are really kind of the preparation for where we're going. The 4th is what I call drive. It's the action. Because one of the things that I see so many people that want to create a successful business do is they think just doing gratitude, reading a book, dreaming big is going to create success. It doesn't.
Yeah.
And so we teach people how to actually take massive action, but not from how most people live. Most people make the mistake of asking, what do I need to do today? That question keeps people so stuck or not as productive as they could be.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, if you start your day with, what result do I want today? That changes everything. Most people will say, okay, what do I need to do? I need to do all this little stuff. And so if you think about most people, they write this huge to-do list, and even if they finish it, they still feel unfulfilled. But then there's days where they barely get anything done on their list and they feel really fulfilled. There's a reason. Because when you were doing this huge long list and checking the boxes, you were focused on what was urgent and demanded. When you focus on that little thing that actually mattered, you were focused on what was important. And most people think that if I just check the little boxes, that clear up some space, I'll feel better. No, you're just mistaking movement for achievement. It's not actually getting to where you want to go. And so what happens is you build this feeling of guilt because you know that you should be doing something different, but you're not doing it. And then by the time you get to the actual action that matters, you don't have the emotional strength to actually do it. So you say, I'll do it again tomorrow. And the same thing keeps happening.
Yeah.
And so what we do is we say, what result do I want today? And what you'll find is the number one action that will actually lead to that result is typically the thing that you avoid the most. And if you just took that action, you'd feel so proud of yourself. Even if the result wasn't there, you'd feel so proud of yourself because you took a scary action. And that will lead to getting more done in a week than most people do in 2 months because you're focused on what result do I want each day.
Yeah.
That's really the core focus of Drive, the productivity principles of success. It's the massive action, having something worth being productive for, someone or something to fight for. Does that make sense?
Of course. And I think there's a lot of times in my world, at least, where that thing might actually not be business related. It might not be what you would consider the traditional to-do list item, but it's actually the soul filling. It's the purpose filling. It's the fun bucket, right? It's like, how do I actually do those things that make me feel the result of happiness and joy and creativity and artistic and all of that, so that I can actually, that will just then bleed into the other areas of my life. And I know for Mike and I, it's, movement and making sure that we're taking time for ourselves and whatever that might be. For me, alone time. I love some alone time, and it might just be a walk by myself. So it doesn't have to necessarily be business related for the business owner out there, but it's the drive to take the action to get the result, however it's going to get you that result in a healthy way,
Yes.
in a healthy way.
Yes. And this is that you brought up a great point, Jess. Like, most people have stuff going on in their personal life. Like, if you think about most entrepreneurs, they don't have any hobbies. Like, they will put their kids in front of the TV and say, 10 minutes, and turns into 40 just so they can check another box. And they bring that guilt into what they do. And so they feel guilt whether they're working their business or guilt when they're with their family. And so they feel this constant pressure of perfection and guilt over and over and over again. And the reason is because it's very easy to focus on the area of our life that is already meeting our needs and neglect the areas of our life that would make us feel more fulfilled. But if, let's say, I'm making this up, that let's say your marriage is on the rocks, that impacts your business.
Yeah.
That impacts everything. And most people avoid it because they get their needs met in business. But if you were to focus on bringing the passion, the love back to that relationship, that fulfillment, that energy bleeds directly into what you share. Because if you think about someone reading one of your posts, people do not, what they're reading is the state that you wrote it in.
Mm.
That's what they're reading. And so the state you create your content from is what people receive. And so if the state you write it in is unfulfilled, trying to be perfect, guilty, that's the energy behind what you do. And people will sense that. And so you end up attracting either no clients or clients that you don't want to work with, because you're putting something out there that isn't actually the best version of you. But if you go back to work on the areas that actually fulfill you, not saying avoid business, but saying taking time to work on what will fill your cup the most, what your heart knows will fill your cup the most, that will directly impact the business.
Yeah. Do you ever suggest to your clients on, let's say, a content creation day or hour, or if they know they're going to be sitting down to create a course or write emails, do you suggest that they sort of do something particular to get themselves into state before they go into content creation or just creation mode?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. For me, before every call I do, I'm blasting Calvin Harris. I am doing
Love it.
burpees. I'm doing something like I came to this call a little sweaty because I always get my state up before I do every single thing that I do,
Yeah.
because I know the state that I do it. Like, I think about it like this. When I'm in the best states, I could, like, if you give me a microphone and a stage, like, it's my happy place.
Yep.
Right. And so I get into a great state to do it. And that might not be a listener here. That might not be you, right?
Question
But
though, question. I don't want to cut you off, but there's an element here of be, do, have, right? And so, because I'm very similar, if you give me a microphone and a stage, regardless of the state that I'm in, that will put me into the state that I would want to be in. So, do you still have to do something to get you into state, or is that action of being on stage with a microphone something that actually gets you into state regardless?
both.
Yeah.
I do both, right?
Yeah.
I do something to get myself in a state, and then giving me a microphone. I could be having a really hard day, but if you
Yep.
get me on a Zoom call, I'm like, turn on,
Yes.
right? Things just happen. And then you say something where you're like, oh, I gotta write that down. That was good.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and you come up with your best stuff when you're in a great state.
Yep.
And so anyways, we need to do something to prime that state and to feel really, really, really good before we do any action. And most people think, well, I need to make that 3 hours. No, it can literally be 30 seconds. 30 seconds of putting your hand on your heart and feeling deep gratitude. 30 seconds of doing high knees. 30 seconds of taking a quick walk, getting your heart rate up, focusing on the beautiful gifts in your life. 30 seconds of any of that, like playing with your kids, like all of that stuff improves your state. But most people think that, well, I need this perfect morning routine before I can get in the state to do anything. I see entrepreneurs do this all the time, and it's just procrastination. Like, I used to teach that, you need to have this structured morning routine. And I was the guy that was like 6 a.m. alarm clock, 6:05, take pre-workout, 6:05 also meditate, then 6:20 press play on my at-home workout. And then 6:50, I would take a shower. And in the shower, I'd listen to Tony Robbins and Brennan Burchard. And then 7:10 a.m., I would go and plan my day. And then I had a kid. And I realized that kids don't care about your morning routine.
Yep.
And I realized that I was like, my daughter helps me to see this lesson. You don't need a kid to see this lesson. But I realized that I was doing my morning routine for the wrong reason. I was doing my morning routine for the purpose of completion. That's not why you do. Yes, that's not why you do a morning routine. The purpose of a morning routine is to feel alive. And you can do that in 3 minutes. You can do that in 3 hours. And so most people use their morning routine as a distraction mechanism for what actually will fill their heart.
It's so good. When I'm on sometimes podcasts now, they'll ask me questions of like, do you have a morning routine? And I always say, gosh, if you could refer back to an episode that I was on 5 years ago, I would have given you exactly what you did at 7:01, at 7:02, at 7:03. And I didn't have a kid, but I had a realization, I had an awakening of it got to a place after 7 years of doing that where I was like, this sucks. I'm just checking things off the to-do list. Like it's super robotic. It's not fulfilling me. I'm feeling more drained after doing it. And it's not adding anything to my life. And so I also switched a couple of years ago what that looks like. But if you're listening and you've ever been a part of one of our programs, this is exactly why we start every coaching call with a dance party. And when you sit there and you roll your eyes and you don't want to get up, and I'm like, just at least do jumping jacks or squats, it's because I want to get you into state for our call, but I also want to be in state for our call. So that's why we start with electronic music and we dance around and look like idiots behind the computer.
I freaking love you guys.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. So are you going to give us 5 and 6, or do we have to like, okay, cool. So what's 5?
Yes.
So after we do the drive and the action.
5 is almost, I think about 5 as the long-term manifestation of your dreams. I call it vibrational alignments.
Okay.
I forgot where I learned this. Maybe it was James. I don't know. But like James Wedmore, maybe. That manifestation is the physical result of your your consistently dominant vibration, right? And so I like to think about what is the super fuel for my success. And so things like deep, deep, deep gratitude, things like spirituality, not saying God, not saying religion, you can universe, infinite intelligence, whatever you believe in. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. Whatever you believe is amazing, but connecting to something bigger, some version of surrendering. Yeah. Now, most people think that means getting on your knees and praying. That might mean it for you. For me, it's just kind of like it's a detachment. It's a feeling of, you know what? Detachment is not that I should own nothing. It's that nothing should own me. And it's this letting go of, I'm going to do everything I can to make the goal happen, but I'm going to let go of my worth being tied to an outcome. And so it's getting into more of a vibrationally aligned state. If you think about where money and success exist, if you look at the people that have not just money, but true wealth, which is where they feel alive, they feel fulfilled, and they have money and success, you'll notice a common thread. They all are just like these people that magnetize you to them. And the reason is because of the state that they're living in. And so I teach my clients to do more and more things that put them into that state. So over the long term, you supercharge success. And then all of a sudden, you'll get new ideas that you didn't realize you had. And it just takes one idea to totally change your life. Like one idea can change everything. One little insight. And from being in an aligned state, I'll give you an example. I made a decision to join a mastermind years ago. And by the way, side note, if you're not in a mastermind, get your butt in a mastermind. You need to be in a mastermind. Please, 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 please. But anyways, that's a different topic.
I didn't ask him to say that, but if you are interested in our 2023 mastermind.
Oh, you're launching a mastermind right now? Sweet.
Yeah, we're filling it up.
Guys, join Jess's mastermind. Oh. Seriously. And most people that are beginning entrepreneurs think, well, I want access to the leader of the mastermind and I want their coaching and their teaching. And coaching and teaching is important. Yeah. But the connections and the conversations in the elevator and like although that little extra time, one little insight can change everything. I just recently joined Tony Robbins' mastermind. And I was at a dinner literally 2 nights ago. And I had a conversation with this woman that that's worth like $250 million
Mm.
and just this crazy success story. And she asked me one question that changed how I viewed my entire business. And it's those little things. It's not Tony,
Yeah.
right? It's that one little question with the person in the room.
Well, it's exactly what happened at the basketball game with you.
Exactly. All right.
Yeah.
There's another example.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah. So, anyways, what I was talking about vibrational.
Vibrational alignment.
Yes. So I joined a mastermind years ago, and I was in a great state, and I chose to join that mastermind. And in one conversation with one guy, that led to doing $900,000 of sales in 5 days.
Whew.
Like in 5 days, like just from one conversation. But that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't in alignment to make the choice that put me in that room. And so it happens in all sorts of ways. But when you feel alive, you pull things to you.
Do you have a strategy or tactic or insight on how to discern if something is out of alignment or not the right choice? Does that make
Ooh,
sense?
yeah.
Okay.
You- It's heart versus head.
Mm.
Like it's I think about this. Think about fear. A lot of entrepreneurs live in fear of taking a bold action, putting a polarizing topic on the internet, right? What they're going to be judged for, or if they'll really succeed. And it's just fear. But fear is just meeting one of your needs. But here's the thing about fear versus faith. And faith, not meaning religion, faith meaning a
Sure.
trust in the future, or a belief in the future. Fear and faith both require that you believe in something unseen. Like they both require you trusting something.
Mm.
And one, fear, is your imagination undirected. It's focused on the survival brain. It's saying, what could go wrong? How could I protect myself? But faith is just imagination directed. That's all it is. It's saying, hey, where do I want to go? Like, what will lead me to my ultimate destination, where I want to be? And so I always ask myself, okay, is this my heart or my head?
Mm.
Right? Because your head will say, no, 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 you shouldn't do it. You don't have the money for that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, but faith would say, yeah, your bank account's low. That's exactly why you need to do it.
Yeah.
And so I always get in touch. I breathe deep into my heart. I I go through a process of visualizing different memories I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
I visualize my big dreams and big goals. I think about all the beautiful blessings in my life, and I get into a state of deep appreciation, and I make the decision from there. And the reason is because Heart Math Institute did a study. So for all you people that don't believe in the woo-woo stuff,
Mm.
Heart Math Institute did a study. And what they found was when people were trying to make a decision from a state of stress, it was chaos. They couldn't do it. And what they did was they measured people's brain waves and heart waves. So they did like the EEG is the brain, the EKG is your heart.
Mhm.
And so they measured people making a decision from a state of stress, a state of fear. And when they measured it, the brain, the heart was just crazy on the charts. Like there was
Yeah.
no correlation. And they had a very hard time making a decision. But what they found was when you got into a deeper state of deep appreciation and gratitude, what they found was the EKG and the EEG were perfectly aligned and smooth.
Mm.
And the heart and the brain were working together. See, this thing I'm pointing to my head, your
Yeah.
brain, that dominates most people's lives.
Right.
And if your brain dominates your life, you will not get to where you want to go. Your mind is a survival mechanism. It's trying to keep you alive. So it's always looking for what's wrong. Your heart, that was around before you had a brain. It's the first sign of life. It has its own nervous system. And so the mind is a tool that your heart uses to create an amazing life. And when you view your mind as a tool instead of the thing that like decides your life, all of a sudden making decisions becomes very, very easy. And so I get into touch with my heart every single day and I make decisions from that place. And when I'm
So
in, go ahead.
powerful.
Yeah, it works. It
Yeah.
works.
And I do believe that both can live in the same room. And I think that's what a lot of the struggle is between the discernment of is this head or heart? Because even in the most simple analogy, and if you're a parent with children around, maybe you want to earmuff them for a second, but um, the tooth fairy, Santa,
Mm.
right? Like we get to an age where we start to question logically with the mind, hold on, this is weird. Does this guy really come down my chimney and like deliver me presents? Or like, is there really like a fairy that comes in and puts a tooth under my pillow? I think it's my mom. I'm going to sleep with one eye open tonight. Right. But the heart is still like, yeah, but I want to believe that. And that's really fun. And that's fantastical. And I want to wake up to $5 under my pillow or wherever inflation has brought us now. Right. So rumor has it they're getting like $10 a tooth. I'm like, what is this? And I got like a quarter. Um, so I do think that both can live in the same room. And I think that's where a lot of the challenge and struggle is. So I love the idea that you gave us of really just tapping back into the gratitude and the feelings of emotions of fulfillment and joy and gratitude and appreciation. And that really just kind of like slingshots you back into the heart. We've got one more. And I'm like, I'm excited, but I'm annoyed because I want to just like keep talking to you because this is so fun and I'm learning so much. But what is the sixth step?
Fulfillment and legacy.
Mm,
It's realizing, and this kind of goes into, if you think about a lot of entrepreneurs feel like there's all this noise in the marketplace, right? How am I going to stand out? There's a feeling of comparison to other people who have gone before them. There's a feeling of, does my story matter? I don't have a big enough list, right? And if you're careful with intention, you'll notice that all of those things are you focusing on yourself. All suffering is you obsessing over you. That's all suffering is. It's you obsessing over you. And so when I hear entrepreneurs say that, I know that their focus is on their own significance, their focus is on themselves, and their focus is on their fears and protecting themselves. But you never will become fulfilled from what you get in life. You become fulfilled from what you give in life. That's where you become fulfilled. That's what true wealth is. True wealth is an emotion. It's a feeling inside of you. And when you live in a state of service, you realize it doesn't freaking matter if someone's done it before.
yeah.
And you start to see like, okay, someone's done it before. That means that it's already proven. Sweet. And it's saying, okay, I believe in this one polarizing concept so much, I'm gonna have the courage to put itself out there, to put that concept out there, because it might just help that one person that deeply needs to hear it right now.
Yeah.
And so from getting into a state of service and a state of just wanting to give and focusing on making someone else's life better, that is where you feel automatically fulfilled. If there is an emotion that's missing from your life, give it. Give what you want to feel and you will automatically feel what you gave. You want financial abundance and you have no money, go to a restaurant and give your last $5.
Yeah.
You will feel it in that moment. You want to feel love and you don't have much in your life right now, help someone else feel loved.
So
The
good.
way out of suffering is service. And if you put that behind a business and everything you do, how can this touch one life today?
Yeah.
Then everything gets so much easier. You feel more alive and you create a legacy that lives beyond your business, beyond your paycheck. It's a ripple effect and it changes. This is like, I picture this every single day, that literally a conversation with you, Jess, could impact someone listening to this to start or to scale their business in some way. And that might impact thousands of lives. And that might impact their kids growing up. And that might impact who they grow up to be and the memories they create. All from one conversation, because it only takes one insight to radically change your whole life.
Mm.
And so I picture that before everything I do, and it automatically makes me feel fulfilled, even if I don't have my goals yet.
Yeah.
Most people think that their worth is based on an outcome, but you've been worthy since the moment you were born. You're worthy right now. You'll always be worthy. And instead, if we focus on how do I make myself feel worthy, to instead helping other people realize they're already worthy, and that might come from a product or service that you share, then you realize that worth has never been a question, and you take more bold action. You put yourself out there more, and you create a business that blows your freaking mind.
I just got served up. We all did.
What
It's so
up?
it's so good though. One of the things we say inside Empower all the time is when in doubt, focus out. And it's that same thing. It's that suffering is internal. And so when you feel that, it's service, right? You turn to service, you turn to impact, you turn to giving. It's all about giving, not getting. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it so much. Oh my gosh. I feel like we just scratched the surface, but it's an hour later. So that
Is it
tells me
really? Oh my gosh.
that we've been rocking and rolling for a while. Yeah. So I'm going to go with the clock on this one because I want to be mindful of your time. But before we drop with our final few questions, where can people find you? How can they work with you? What cool stuff do you have going on?
The gram.
Yeah. Where are
Just
you on the gram?
Just my name at Brad Bizjack on the gram. And if this stuff is really something that makes you feel like, okay, there's something here. I've at this stage worked with over 30,000 people all over the world, and I've recognized some patterns, like patterns that keep people stuck in overwhelm and patterns that help people thrive. And I call them archetypes. Like I've boiled it down to five kind of buckets that people fit into, 5 ways of viewing success. And most people don't realize that when you're living in a certain archetype, there's predictable beliefs and roadblocks that you're going to run into. And if you know what those are ahead of time, you can elevate that archetype and avoid them, so you can shorten that learning curve of success so much faster. And so what I did was I created a free quiz. It's called What's Your Unique Success Archetype? It will show you where you are right now, the lens you're viewing success through, what your limiting beliefs likely are, and exactly what you need to do to shift those right now. And so it's totally free. It takes 60 seconds. You can find it at quizzes.bradbizjack.com.
Awesome.
But yeah, would love to serve you guys in that way. It's
Awesome.
really, really valuable.
Yeah, I've taken it. It's incredible. It's got a really cool whole like sequence it puts you into with videos that explain, why maybe you are showing up the way that you are and how you can make changes to that if you're interested. It's awesome. We'll drop that in the show notes. So I'm super grateful. All right. Are you open to a couple of rapid fire questions?
Oh yeah, bring them
Let's
on.
see how fast we can go. What's your favorite movie?
Top Gun. Top Gun Maverick.
Good one. Yeah, that was really good. What are you currently reading?
Right now I'm reading the Untethered Soul.
Such a good one. What did you want to be when you were a little kid?
Marine biologist.
Cool. Did you go to school for that?
No, definitely not. Went to school for hospitality management, and then it switched to economics.
Oh, that's like a perfect blend of what you do, though. Your people and business. I love it. Best piece of advice that you've ever gotten?
When you trade your expectations for appreciations, your whole life changes in an instant.
Best piece of advice you've ever given?
Probably that same piece of advice.
Okay. If I were to give you, go ahead.
Or life is always happening for you and not to you. Even the pain is a gift that leads to a more elevated version of you.
Yeah, I love that. If I were to give you $50,000, I'm not, it's hypothetical, but if I were to give you $50,000, this is our $50,000 question. How would you invest it in the business?
I would put it into my own personal growth and development. I would put it into coaches, mentors, masterminds.
I love it. Last question. We name the company Digital Business Evolution because we believe that you're always evolving and growing, and your businesses are a reflection of you and your evolution. So what is your next business or personal evolution?
Oh, that's amazing. The next, that's a great question. Next personal evolution is working half the amount of hours that I've worked and 5xing our top line.
And it's going to happen. It already did.
It's going to happen.
It already did. That's awesome. I love it. Well, ladies and gents, you heard it here. There were tons of mic drops on this episode. I know I'm going to go back and listen. I mean, it was basically a free coaching call, and Brad doesn't do coaching for free. So take advantage of it. If you loved this episode, take a screenshot, share it out on social. The way that we give back to Brad, the best gift we can give him is letting him know exactly what our takeaways were, our ahas, and what we loved from the episode. So make sure you tag him at Brad Bizjack, BradBizjack, and tag me at I am Jessica DeRose. And as always, friends, cheers to your evolution. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you loved this episode, I invite you to be a part of our ripple effect and share it with a friend. And please, if you feel called, take 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review, and I'll be forever grateful. Until next time, cheers to your evolution.